welcome back to my channel and welcome to another video. Today's video I didn't kind of originally plan on making, however, over the last month I haven't done sort of any form of exercise really. I haven't gone to the gym. I've had a holiday away in Iceland, I've spent time with family over Christmas, I spent New Year's in London and just never really had access to a gym, so I unintentionally had a month off the gym. If you know my past story at all, then you'll know that I did suffer from an eating disorder, and I think that's probably the longest time I've had away from exercise in years, prior to my eating disorder probably. And in the past that would have really bothered me. I would have tried to get some form of workout in, even if it was just some like at-home bodyweight workout, I would have done some kind of movement. This year, however, I just thought, you know what, I'm just making the most of the time with the people that I'm with. I'm gonna enjoy myself. So today I'm gonna be talking about what actually happens when you take a break for a month from the gym and how it will affect your progress once you resume training. First thing I'm gonna touch on is muscle appearance. So in terms of your actual muscle size, perceived muscle size at least, so what you can visibly see, it will appear smaller after 1 month off the gym. And there's a few reasons for this. Firstly, when you exercise on a regular basis, it subjects your muscles to inflammation. So essentially during exercise, you cause small micro tears to form in your muscle, and that leads to an inflammatory response, which therefore causes your muscles to appear larger in size. When you remove exercise, you remove that inflammatory stimulus, and therefore the inflammation goes down, decreasing that overall perceived size of the muscle. Another thing that happens is when you exercise on a regular basis, you have very high glycogen and water stores within your muscle. So glycogen is essentially your storage form of carbohydrate, which during exercise can get used as a fuel source, and therefore when you exercise on a regular basis, your muscles adapt to maintaining large glycogen stores in order to make your workouts more efficient, make sort of that energy production process more efficient, as it has a fuel source sort of on hand, close by, ready to use. When you stop exercise, those glycogen stores within your muscle decrease. Therefore, your muscle's storing less glycogen, glycogen is using up less space, again, therefore it decreases that perceived size of the muscle. Glycogen also holds on to 3 times its own weight in water, which obviously therefore when you have high glycogen stores within your muscle, you have a large water reserve as well. So when you stop sort of exercising and those glycogen stores go down and you're storing less within your muscle, so does the water reserve. Meaning once again, your muscle decreases in overall perceived size as you're storing fewer substances within it. However, once you start then training again, your water and glycogen stores within the muscle soon replenish themselves and therefore once again lead to an overall increased appearance in muscle size. As for then actual muscle mass, so now talking about the sort of muscle fibers themselves, it can take sort of give or take around 3 weeks of inactivity for muscle atrophy to occur. So muscle atrophy basically means muscle breakdown, so actual breakdown and loss of muscle mass. However, that's a very rough estimate. Between studies, it massively varies. On average, it's sort of a general consensus that it could take around 3 weeks to start seeing some decreases in muscle mass. However, it also depends on whether you're a beginner, whether you're more of a trained athlete, and also, like with everything, everyone is unique and individual, and genetics play a role as well. So that's not to mean if you take more than 3 weeks off of exercise that you will definitely lose muscle mass. However, you may lose some. However, one thing to be wary of when sort of interpreting the studies regarding sort of loss of muscle mass is that they don't all distinguish between actual muscle mass loss and then those losses of glycogen and water that I previously mentioned. So they're often included in these muscle mass losses, meaning that in a lot of the studies, the actual muscle mass loss may be a lot less than the study is portraying, and those earlier losses in muscle mass are more likely to be down to those losses of glycogen and water stores. And then also, just because you're no longer going to the gym doesn't mean you're necessarily going to lose muscle mass. It depends on your kind of activity level as well during that period of no longer attending the gym or doing sort of dedicated workouts. If you still remain sort of relatively active, you're still doing a fair bit of walking, you're still engaging those muscles and utilising them, it's very unlikely that you'll really lose much, if any, muscle mass at all over the course of a month. However, if you're a lot more sedentary, then you're more likely to lose a higher level of muscle mass, but even so, it's not going to be a large percentage of your muscle mass. When it comes to actual strength, so your physical strength capacity, whether that changes at all, interestingly, so in beginners who haven't been going to the gym for that long or are quite new to lifting, they can see some decreases in strength after around 3 weeks off from your regular training. However, interestingly, in the long term, it doesn't seem to affect the potential strength gains that a beginner can have. So there was one study that I looked at that looked at a 6-month period where there was a group of beginners who took regular 3-week rest periods in between sort of training for a set period of time. And that group actually managed to achieve sort of the same percentage 1 rep max as the group who just did training consistently without having those 3-week breaks in the middle of it. So it just goes to show that you don't have to be training 24/7, sticking to a regular routine all the time. If you have a short holiday coming up, if you have a few weeks off, if you have an injury that lasts for a few weeks, you can still get to the same place as if you didn't have that time off. As for trained athletes, so people who have been lifting for quite a few years, they will generally be able to maintain strength up to around 3 weeks. After 3 weeks have passed, then they may start to see some losses. However, they are generally better at maintaining their strength. And when it comes to both sort of potential muscle mass loss and strength loss, the good news is that when you get back into training, you can gain both your strength and your muscle mass back a lot easier than you did the first time round. And that is thankful to sort of hypertrophy training, which is focused on sort of building muscle mass and therefore increasing muscle size. What happens is that within your muscle fibers, so your muscle cells, you get an increased number of myonuclei. Myonuclei are really important for muscle synthesis, so building new muscle mass. And interestingly, when you take a break and have time off, even if your muscle mass may decrease slightly, even if you lose some strength, the myonuclei number doesn't decrease. So you'll get gains in the number of myonuclei through hypertrophy training, through building muscle mass, and then those gains stay even when you take a rest period from exercise. That means that when you come back to it, thankfully, due to that higher number of myonuclei within your muscles due to your previous training, it means new muscle mass is synthesized much more efficiently and rapidly, getting you back to where you were. And that's kind of where this whole idea of muscle memory comes into play. It is very much down to those myonuclei within your muscle fibers. So overall, to kind of conclude, you will probably notice a decrease in perceived muscle size. However, that will be more likely due to the loss of the glycogen and water stores that I mentioned before, and also that decreased inflammation. So when it comes to actual muscle mass and your strength, you may see some losses. However, they're likely to be relatively insignificant, and in the long term, they're unlikely to have any kind of major effect on your training progress and on what you manage to achieve months from now. And if you do experience some losses, like I said, 1, they'll be very minor, and 2, you will thankfully be able to gain back those losses relatively quickly thanks to the adaptation of the muscle and the increased number of myonuclei within your muscle fibers. That was kind of everything that I wanted to touch upon today. Hopefully you found it informative, hopefully you found it interesting, and hopefully it opened your eyes to the fact that if you do have a time where you're on holiday, you don't have access to a gym, life just gets in the way and you have time off the gym, in the long term, it's not going to have any significant impact. And any losses that you do experience will be rapidly gained back. So hopefully that puts you at ease a little bit more as well if you are sort of in a situation that I kind of used to be in, where I used to hate taking time off and found it really hard mentally to take that time off the gym because I thought all my progress would go. Hopefully that's opened your eyes to make you realise that actually your progress will be maintained relatively well, and you definitely won't re-enter the gym completely from scratch again. You won't be way back to where you started. So hopefully you have enjoyed this video. Be sure to smash a big thumbs up on it if you have. If you have any other questions, comments, or anything else related to this video that you'd like to see sort of a part 2 of, or a second video on, then definitely comment down below. Also be sure to go ahead and click on the little red subscribe button down below, as well as tapping on that notifications bell so that you get notified whenever I upload. And I'll be sure to see you very soon with a brand new video. Bye!